The next generation car was supposed to be the great equalizer. No longer could a team say, well, Hendrick can afford better parts than us. All these cars are now bought from the NASCAR Walmart. Still in the tightest and most unpredictable season in NASCAR history thanks to Goodyear not making a tire that can last long, or NASCAR, and their crappy parts. One thing remained the same, one thing remained predictable for all these teams on this list. They ended up missing the postseason once again. NRF Productions proudly presents the Crossroads for the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series non-playoff teams. For a good chunk of the season, RFK Racing was only remembered for things that happened off the track. For one, their Twitter page is trying way too hard to be NASCAR Chasm. I can understand from the impressions, but in terms of reputation, this doesn't make RFK Racing look too good. Also, back in March when Brad Keselowski got the ball dropped on him, the 6 team ended up modifying a single source part, which is a massive red flag with this brand new next generation car bought and assembled from Walmart. Because of that, Brad Keselowski's fate was signed, sealed, and delivered as the R&D team for Roush, as he would get a massive L2 penalty, which included the loss of 100 driver points. Now, if you add those points back, it still doesn't make a difference. Brad Keselowski easily misses the playoffs for the first time since 2013, the first year of Gen 6. Fortunately, the win streak still has a pulse now that Matt McCall has finally found some speed in this number 6 car. We saw this at Bristol when he had contending speed, and at Texas when he won the pole, his first since 2019. Still, my guess is that if he doesn't aggressively push his way to victory at Talladega, rough up a couple rookies in the process, that will seal the deal for Brad Keselowski in 2022. Many would argue instead that the better driver at Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing this season, it has been Chris Buescher, NASCAR's Mendoza line of the 2020s. If you're a driver or team that wanted to determine whether you're having a good season or not, seriously, I'm serious about this. Pull out Google, and if you're below Christopher Buescher, as Dale Jr. calls him on the NBC broadcast, it's time to start putting in more reps in the gym and putting in more time at the shop to work on these cars, because you are not doing a good job as a race team. And by that metric, this 6 team honestly needs to step it up in a big way, because Buescher has more top 5s, more top 10s, and just missed the end target, which was victory lane to make the playoffs. Shortcomings at Sonoma and Richmond are why he ended up in this video. I'm sure after the Bristol night race you can add Chris Buescher to the long list of drivers that hate Bristol dirt. Even with a win, RFK Racing, they still have a lot of work to do for 2023. Priority number 1 is easy. Get Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski in the playoffs. At least one of those drivers needs to be racing for a championship next year. Priority number 2, they've got to rebrand the RFK Racing page. It is an absolute clown show, and they need to be more professional like we see from Hendrick and JGR. Race teams that don't need to be a TikTok personality, because guess what? They actually know how to win races. Do that and I will truly believe in the 2020s RFK renaissance. This is year 4 of Spire Motorsports in the NASCAR Cup Series, an organization which shares CEO Jeff Dickerson's vision of becoming the next great NASCAR dynasty like their alliance partner Hendrick Motorsports. It is a team that is short-staffed compared to Hendrick and has to rely on Corey LaJoie and his blue-collar upbringing to help with the daily tasks in the shop. That, as well as his stacking pennies approach, building towards the future little by little, it makes him well more admirable than some of the other legacy drivers in this series. Overall though, this is a season that has seen LaJoie regress in average finish thanks to a lot of mechanical issues, which honestly I don't blame them, because if you watch the Race of Champions docuseries on the Daytona 500 where Spire was featured, the 7 team in that race had to sacrifice going all in to try to salvage the equipment due to the parts shortage, as you had Ryan Sparks come on the radio and tell Corey LaJoie that, even though there's a 9th place finish, we have to remain conservative and finish 14th to keep the car in one piece. Though if you ask the average fan, that's not what they remember from Corey LaJoie this season. They remember the 2022 Quaker State 400 where he was the lovable underdog a few laps away from getting his first win and Spire's second. For what Ryan Sparks and the 7 team they have went through this season, they have punched above their weight class with some of their runs this season. As for car number 77, you have to look at both Josh Bilicki and Landon Castle, who have gotten a great share of the workload. Both drivers have also been a compliment to the team, with Landon Castle proving to be a guy organizations continue to overlook. If Spire finally decides it's time to put someone full-time in car number 77, there's a good list of candidates right there. They don't need to overdo it in this signing. For the first time since 2017 and the first driving for STENHOUSE Racing, Aric Almirola has missed the playoffs, despite having the stigma of someone who pays to play thanks to the focus on the Smithfield to consistently make that top 16, whether it was the organization when it was at its peak in 2018 or its low in 2021 when they were an absolute disaster, honestly that is nothing to look past and say that Almirola isn't that good. And this season for a while, Aric Almirola was NASCAR's most consistent driver. A streak of top 10 finishes to start the year, and for the longest time he was the leader in laps completed. Now the difference between he and his teammate Kevin Harvick, who both entered the NBC portion about the same in the standings, is the fact that Kevin Harvick continued his historical trend by climbing the ladder. He was the ladder, whereas Aric Almirola was the chute. He suffered an uncomfortable, bumpy slide all the way down to 19th in points. There were times this season where Aric Almirola, he looked to pull off the Hail Mary at New Hampshire and Richmond, but to no avail. There would be no focus on the Smithfield, at least not this postseason. The Bacon King at least is evading retirement for now, as he will be back in 2024, and his sizzle on the NASCAR Cup Series garage will continue to be felt. Teammate Cole Custer's 2022 season, it has been well documented on this channel. Stewart-Haas Racing, they have moved the chains forward, however Custer seems shackled by the lack of speed and bad luck, as debate whether or not the 41 is the fourth priority on the SHR hierarchy because this is the Haas car, but Cole Custer regardless is struggling to compete. Right now he is well on his way to becoming a NASCAR Cup Series bust, considering how he entered in 2019 as a championship favorite, a driver that won a lot of races, and if things don't improve, man, we're going to look back and see him as potentially a driver like Reed Sorensen. Ironically, they share the same car number. But at least for now, Greg Zipadelli has reassured that Custer is a part of the team's blueprint for the 2023 season and beyond. The team Custer could have been sentenced to for his crime of being an imposter to the SHR system is their satellite team Rick Ware Racing. The 15 car has been a rotational effort with guys like JJ Yaley, Ryan Preece, David Reagan, and sports car driver Joey Hand. I want to touch on Joey Hand a bit because in his few starts he was running up front. He was on the NBC broadcast running inside the top 10 at one point. Didn't get the finishes he deserved, but if you're Rick Ware and you're trying to put together a schedule for this car next season, lend a hand out to Joey. As for the 51 car, I am going to say something that you guys are going to think is completely ludicrous. This car is underachieving. So how on earth is a Rick Ware Racing team underachieving? Number one, you got things like crappy parts that have really derailed this team. But then again, despite having a consistent driver, crew chief, top sponsor, NerdTech, the 51 car, believe it or not, in the owner's points is lower than car number 15. And I think a lot of this goes back to the driver of this car, as for some reason Cody Ware is this lovable underdog, which I do not understand. Number one, he only got his ride for being the son of Rick Ware. When it comes to legacy drivers, the moral route would be the one Jeffrey Earnhardt has taken when he tries to race for other lesser known teams to try to make a name for himself. Now with this performance, it's awfully hard to defend him. I wish the best for his health and his safety after Sunday, but you cannot convince me otherwise that he is the best option for this fully funded NerdTech number 51. Rick Ware Racing, I'm going to say it once, you guys can do a lot better than what's in your bloodline. KAULIG Racing, on the other hand, has the money and the people to become the next Trackhouse Racing story. I seriously believe that they have all the parts and pieces in place. Now in terms of getting there, they got some work to do, especially with car number 16. It has improved its rank in the Owners' Championship thanks to a stretch of road course races where AJ Allmendinger was a contender to win a few of those events, including Indianapolis where he had to battle his cooling suit breaking midway through the race to come home in second, and Watkins Glen where the chaos amongst Hendrick teammates got him another runner-up finish. Many might say that he is the easy candidate for car number 16, and he has talked about AJ Allmendinger that he is willing to do what's best for the company, contradicting his past statements that said that he was content with being in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Still, there is going to be a major announcement with this team coming on October 5th, and my prediction is that it is going to be not AJ Allmendinger, but instead 2021 Xfinity champion Daniel Hemrick that will be in that number 16 full-time next season. Like I said back in the silly season video, Daniel Hemrick will not win you races, but he is good from a team building standpoint. He can get you good finishes, and it is going to be a major compliment to the driver in car number 31. I'm telling you guys, Justin Haley continues to be the most overlooked, undervalued, underappreciated, what other words kind of associate with those in the dictionary? You name it, he is that driver in the NASCAR Cup Series. If you think about it, he is truly a few Fortune 500 sponsors and a crap ton of mainstream popularity away from being Bubba Wallace. Both are notable super speedway racers. Both are seen as the faces of their brand new race teams, and heck, both have had awful pit crews that held them back from their true potential. The only difference is Justin Haley, man, he has had so many penalties this season with the wheel coming off, which caused him to lose Trent Owens not once but twice for a total of 8 races. I'm telling you, at Justin Haley's funeral, if he is going to be let down, one more time, it is going to be that pit crew putting him in his gravesite for the final time. And that right there is why I cringe when people talk about, oh, Bubba Wallace has this horrible pit crew. He has the worst luck in NASCAR. But of course, that's what you get with a driver like Justin Haley that continues to be overlooked, but he continues to do his job damn well. It is easy to imagine Haley being a championship contender by now if he were on Hendrick or JGR, but with KAULIG Racing, give it time. Trust the process, and eventually Justin Haley is going to be up there with KAULIG Racing, winning races and potentially winning championships. Honestly, my philosophy when it comes to predictions is it's a lot like batting average. For every home run that's hit by NL MVP this season, Paul Goldschmidt, he strikes out at least 2 to 3 times. I know I missed out on some of my full tank predictions, especially the 2022 regular season predictions video, but all those swings and misses in the dirt is just progress towards the long ball. Martin Truex Jr., NASCAR Cup Series champion, missed the 2022 playoffs, and I predicted it correct. So I'm sure you've heard the victim mentality well enough by now. Martin Truex Jr., he finished 4th in the regular season. He should have made it on points. He should have had a chance to race at the championship, which I agree with. However, in this video, we are going to strictly look at things from a team perspective, because in a garage like the NASCAR Cup Series, there is no playing victim. Martin Truex Jr. using his clutch gene this season was comparable to Vic Faust controlling his emotions. MTJ failed to chase down William Byron at Richmond. Dover not being his fault in this case, Ross Chastain threw a bad block, which this move alone costed MTJ 8 precious points. James Small, like Ben Bayshore for Kyle Busch, completely botched the strategy at Nashville. At New Hampshire, Martin Truex Jr., he was outrageously dependable in the Interstate Batteries colors, well, until he and James Small, they got marred back in traffic and looked like complete frauds. And honestly, the two don't seem to have the greatest chemistry either. I'm dead serious about this. Every single time NBC would cut to the 19 audio, you would always hear MTJ and James Small bickering over strategy and adjustments. And then you had the situation at Daytona where MTJ was wondering why the hell were they in the calm of the storm when they had enough points to play with, considering Ryan Blaney, he was down and out. All Martin Truex Jr. had to do was conserve his stuff, yet here they were running mid-pack right in the eye of the storm where they got wrecked, and that ended up screwing his chances completely at making the playoffs. It is safe to say James Small is no Cole Pearn. Great engineer, but his adjustments and head-scratching strategy proved to be a liability for Martin Truex Jr.'s championship and playoff hopes. To be a Martin Truex Jr. fan, you need to expect disappointment, and therefore you will never be disappointed. Want to change that mentality? Make Chris Gale the brand new crew chief for the 19 next season, or otherwise this is the unfortunate new motto for the 2017 NASCAR Cup Series champion. Wood Brothers Racing made a tough decision over the offseason to hit the rebuild button in this next generation era by parting ways with Matt DiBenedetto in favor of the much younger Harrison Burton. I know he's a rookie. They put the rookie stripes on these cars for a reason, because it is just like a 16-year-old when he begins with a student driver sticker on the back of the family minivan. Mistakes are expected. Still, Harrison Burton began his season like an astronaut launching off from Cape Canaveral and has hovered around the back half of the top 30 in points all season long. Honestly, I'm going to make a bold statement right here, right now. The Wood Brothers Racing team would have won race 100 by now had they kept Matt DiBenedetto in the 21. They've committed to playing this long-term game, and honestly, if Harrison Burton, if he does not pan out this 21 team, they're going to have to go through this process all over again. The team is going to be in limbo, and they're going to continue to delay their quest to win race number 100. Not to say the driver is the lone issue. Did you see that pit crew on Sunday after they gave him the lead? On another note, being the most comparable driver to Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the modern NASCAR era, Bubba Wallace needed to back up the hype that got him 2 shows on ESPN and Netflix, as well as all the mainstream Fortune 500 sponsorships. Back in July, feeling like I'm Bubba Wallace from the lyrics Akilla Kyre was running 25th and telling his crew chief not to talk to him. Now it's to a much better tune of top 10 finishes, as Bubba Wallace has been one of the most consistent drivers in the past 2 months. I'm impressed with how much this 23 team, well now the 45 team, has improved just in these past 2 months. Going from, the lows of the lows to really put that behind him, and now they are starting to show momentum. prompting not just a contract extension, but the nod from Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin to race for the Owners' Championship now that Kurt Busch is out, as we will get to him in a little bit. And he and Booty Barker, they are climbing the Toyota ladder with the shortcomings of Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. I'd say they're the third best team behind Christopher Bell and Denny Hamlin at the moment. The win at Kansas was just the icing on the cake. Bubba Wallace is getting things together quickly. And if you're 2311 Racing, no changes should be made. Give this 23 team another go in its current form for 2023 and see what happens. That's what I think they should do next year. The 45, now 23 team is still without their main jockey Kurt Busch to be that stable veteran that knows the ropes of the NASCAR Cup Series to help build the 2311 program going forward. It has been a wrinkle in the master plan for Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan, who are instead having to all but groom Ty Gibbs to succeed Kyle Busch in the 18 next year. Plus, we don't have a scope of what the performance is going to look like for Kurt Busch, a Kurt Busch post-concussion, as it could be not very good for this race team. Guys like Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Casey Kane, they were not the great drivers they once were when they came back. Heck, Kane even opted out of his retirement tour altogether because of his concussion-like symptoms. The 45 right now just straight up has a lot of question marks right now. You know, that is the soup of the day right there, and they need to address those immediately. And until then, this team right now is just like staring into the abyss. It's a lot of nothingness. It's a lot of just getting by until the 2023 season. Front Row Motorsports is still not living up to their name, even though they've been in the NASCAR Cup Series for over a decade now, though at least progress seems to be made, as every driver typically has a peak in performance in their mid to late 30s, and right now Michael McDowell is yet another example of that. His 11 top 10s this season in the 34 is a new Front Row record. At Gateway, NASCAR's first NASCAR Cup Series race, Michael McDowell dominated a green flag run. Nobody could pass him on the long run. And I'll tell you, nothing about that sentence would have made any sense back in 2017, 5 years ago. But then again, does anything now in the NASCAR Cup Series? It's a shame Michael McDowell got that L2 penalty at Pocono, because if you take that away, if you get rid of all that shame of being a team that cheated, he'd be on the cusp of finishing in the top 20 in points. No win necessary. Rookie Todd Gilliland hopes to reach that Michael McDowell level of success eventually. Seth Barber was assigned no easy task in developing a driver that had never made a Cup or Xfinity start prior to this season's Daytona 500. Keeping that on the brain when looking at his statistics gives this 38 car hope that they can finally have their long-term driver of the future, especially after Todd Gilliland. He managed to finish 4th in the crapshoot known as the Indy Road Course and its 90-degree turn 1 of chaos. Much like Justin Haley, you gotta trust the process. Trust it well, and it will not be long before Todd Gilliland starts picking up the pace like he did in trucks. The Richard Petty Maury Gallagher collaboration would have cracked the Billboard Top 10 if it were a song. The 42 team led by Ty Dillon has played the second fiddle quite well, building a thick 3-subject notebook full of notes about track conditions, how the next generation car races at certain tracks, and their progression from on average 26th on the grid to finish 21st. Ty Dillon is not the greatest asset to a team, but he has built up this 42 team so that Noah Gragson next year can be just as competitive as car number 43, and he deserves some massive credit for getting this program on the right foot. Meanwhile, the NASCAR world time traveled back in time 55 years to see the famed number 43 win yet another Southern 500 over car number 11. Only this time it was a hard-charging Denny Hamlin watching his former teammate Erik Jones win the 43, its first race since 2014. Though if you believe that rain winds are Mickey, then you have to go back even further to John Andretti when he won Martinsville before the turn of the century. Erik Jones did and is doing what few drivers have done before him, as he got to pick out a cowboy hat and he signed a long-term extension to remain at Petty GMS for many years to come. Erik Jones is the franchise driver now for Richard Petty. He is the driver that got away from Toyota, and he is going to be here to really help this 43 propel into this new era, this next generation era. To answer a question from 2021, yes, Petty GMS, they are trending up as an organization. And it is because now they have drivers that want to stay here, and they have a crew chief that didn't apply for this job like he would for a grill master's job at McDonald's. Never thought I'd say these words, but the 43 car is relevant again, and they could really make a big difference next season. Look out for Erik Jones going forward. While RCR, Petty GMS, and KAULIG, they have been on the upswing for Chevrolet, now we get to JTG Doherty Racing. Year 14 in the NASCAR Cup Series, and they've seemed to hit a plateau, and as much as Chevrolet has the performance, they are the manufacturer to beat. A return to Toyota or Ford wouldn't be a bad idea, because then they'd be a higher priority as a team. And I think that is something that would be a major asset to the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Brian Petty combination that has a lot of potential. You saw it well in the spring when they were on that top 10 streak, not just at, a short track or super speedway. This was intermediate tracks. You saw it at Kansas when the Sonny D Chevrolet had race winning speed under the hood before Stenhouse pushed it a bit too much and ended up ruining his competitive chances at that victory. JTG Doherty Racing, 100%, they have the potential to be as good as they were in 2014 and 2016, but they're just missing the correct pieces to be in place to reach that. Finally, we get to the forgotten organization, Live Fast Motorsports. The Matt Tifft BJ McLeod 78 team is a single car operation much like the one that won the 2017 championship. However, they have struggled to evolve in this second season. They've taken quite a nosedive in the owner's standings and into the danger zone, the bottom three, where NASCAR could quite possibly revoke a charter if necessary. And with people like Denny Hamlin, Dale Jr., and even Kevin Harvick considering buying a charter, that is not territory you want to be in. So what is the fix? Much like Spire, I think there's no need to overthink it. This is a smaller team that has had to deal with the part shortages and inflation on top of a variety of other growing pains in this sophomore season. Maybe 2023 will be more normal and more expected for this organization to start cracking the top 30 more often and really start making progress to the extent that we've seen from Barney Visser and Furniture Row, the role models for this single car 78 team. So anyways, this is Nathan for NRF Productions signing out, and just remember guys and gals, life's a beach and then you drive.